Ready to order?
Yeah. I'll have a coffee, two coffees, and it says here breakfast anytime.
That's right.
I'll have the pancakes and the Age of Enlightenment, please.
And for you?
Oh, so I'll have the toucan. Yeah, no reason.
I'll be back for the coffee.
All right, great. Nice, baby. Renaissance. I went over her head. I should have said Renaissance. I said Age of Enlightenment. Oh God, like a Las Vegas waitress is gonna get an obscure French philosophical reference. It's like I'm trying to show off to her, and I may as well have just said, "Let me jump your ignorant bones."
Mikey, don't even sweat her, all right? We're gonna meet our honey soon, all right? You know that Chrissy's friend's gonna be money.
It's 22. We gotta get out of here.
Baby, will you relax just for a minute here?
Excuse me. We're in a little bit of a hurry.
Hang on, Voltaire.
Hey guys, welcome back. We are in chapter 22, section 2 today. Covered section 1 in class with the scientific revolution, and that leads us to section 2, the Enlightenment, which is taking place in Europe, mostly in France. And we're going to start out with two philosophers, John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, and they had some very different views on government. But let's backtrack just a little bit, pick up to our scientific revolution and our scientists that we've been talking about in class. The scientific revolution challenged conventional thought, and it started to make people think about the world in a different way and start to challenge the way that we saw the world. We looked at the heliocentric theory, just different things like that, and how science could be used to prove or to reason out different things that were in our world. And this is going to spur forward the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is going to take place, like I said, mostly in France is where it's really going to be a hotbed, but it's going to take place and spread throughout Europe. The Enlightenment is just going to be kind of a extension of the scientific revolution in that it's a new way of thinking. People saw a new way of proving the world of science, and they take this and they move it into government and religion and economics and even into education. And so we're going to take a look first at Thomas Hobbes, and he had what was called a social contract, is what his big idea is. Thomas Hobbes wrote a book called Leviathan, where you would have this big monster, a sea monster actually, who was kind of took over the world. And Hobbes believed very strongly in this ultimate power of one person or one group of people having the power. He wrote that without government, there would be a war of every man against man, and that life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He said basically without rules, without the government keeping everybody in check, that the whole world would try to eat each other, trying to get as much for themselves and just to try and survive, that people would be fighting over food, over water, and that government is there to keep this from happening. He argued that in order to escape this fate, we had to hand over all of our rights to a strong government, a ruler. And this was the social contract idea, that you sign over your rights to the government, and the government in turn promises to protect you from other people, from death ultimately. He believed in an absolute monarchy, one that could demand order and obedience. He believed that in order to keep the people from destroying each other, someone had to completely control all aspects of human life. Locke is going to be a bit different than Hobbes. He is a little bit more of a glass is half full kind of a guy. He believed that people in general were good. Locke believed that people could govern themselves and therefore did not have a need for the same absolute power setups that Hobbes supported. So he's going to believe more in a democratic system, that people could be in charge of other people and move forward that way. He believed that all people were born with three natural rights, and these should sound somewhat familiar if you're familiar with the United States Declaration of Independence at all, but he believed that people had the right to life, liberty, and property. We'll talk in class a little bit more about how property got changed to the pursuit of happiness, but it has to do with Benjamin Franklin, actually. But Locke believed that the government was there to protect these rights of life, liberty, and property, and not to deny these rights. And he also said that if a government tries to deny these rights to people, that it wasn't just the right of the people, but the responsibility of the people to overthrow that government to make sure that the people are back in charge. And so we've got these two kind of competing philosophies about government, and all this is taking place in Paris, where it's kind of this hotbed for philosophical thinkers. This has become the people who are having their philosophies come forward here. The philosophers become known as philosophes, which is just French for philosophers. These people believed that people really had all the answers in the world, that reason, if we just used enough reason, we could figure out the reason why this happens or that happens, whether it's science, whether it's what the best government would be, whatever the case may be. And they had 5 concepts that form their core belief, and those would be reason, nature, happiness, progress, and liberty. We're going to take a look at a few more philosophers now, some of these philosophes from France, and then we'll look at one from Italy, in fact. But first one we're going to look at is Voltaire. And Voltaire he was a French philosopher who had over 70 works that he had written, essays and books and some other things. And he was very well known for using satire to criticize the people that he was against, which mostly was the government at the time, but with some nobility, the church, some other people like that. He was sent to jail on more than one occasion for the things he wrote, and eventually gets himself kicked out of France and has to move to England, where they take him in and allow him to continue to write and to publish his thoughts. He believed always in fighting for tolerance, so allowing other people to have differing views would be tolerance, and reason, the freedom of religious beliefs. You have the right to believe in your God if I have the right to believe in my God, and the freedom of speech. In fact, he is the one who coined the phrase, "I do not agree with a word you say, but will defend your right to say it to the death." And so that is Voltaire. Our next guy is Montesquieu, Baron de Montesquieu. And he was another French writer who dedicated himself to the study of political liberty. He comes up with part of our United States Constitution, actually, gets taken from his thoughts and his beliefs. The idea of separation of powers, the checks and balances. At the time, he believed that Britain had the best government in the world because it separated its power at the top. It did not have all the power concentrated in one place. The king had the power to enforce laws, and the parliament had the ability to make laws, and then the judges were there to interpret the laws, and so everything was split between the three. So there was this check on each part. He wrote the book "The Spirit of the Laws," where he advocated this checks and balances system. And our next guy is going to be Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And Rousseau believed that the only legitimate government, the one that was the only one that was fair and the only one that should be around, is a direct democracy, and this is one that where the people represent themselves and only themselves. He believed that men were equal, and so therefore he advocated the abolishment of things like noble titles, kings, things like that, that put some men as more important than other men. And many of his ideas would eventually lead to the French Revolution, which is coming up here quickly in our studies. Our next guy is Beccaria. Beccaria is from Italy, and he wrote a lot about the criminal justice system. In fact, a lot of our Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of our Constitution, are straight from him, with the right to a speedy trial and no cruel and unusual punishment and things like this. He was against the torture of suspects and witnesses. Basically said that he believed that the government was there to preserve social order, to protect people, not to get revenge for crime. So if we are putting somebody in jail or whatever our punishment is going to be, it should be to keep people from doing it in the future, rather than to get revenge for the things that they have done already. And so, like I said, a lot of our Bill of Rights comes straight from Beccaria. The last thing we need to talk about here in the Enlightenment for today is the women. Most philosophers kind of took a very traditional view in respect to women, that they are wives and mothers, and that's how they should be treated. And they were offered very little to no education, and that's the way things should be. That the men would take care of the thinking, and they would take care of the sewing and the cooking and the cleaning and things like that. You can imagine how some of the women would feel about this whole explosion of thought in France, and they're not allowed to be a part of it, and they said this isn't going to be the way that this is going to be. And so we have two women in particular that we need to look at. Is the first one, Mary Estelle. She criticized the female role in society. She said that women should have just as much role as males, and she said that if all men are born free, how is it that all women are born slaves? So basically, why do the men, why are they all equal, and the women have to cook and clean for the men? Why can't they be the thinkers and the doers as well? And our other one is Mary Wollstonecraft, who urged women to enter medicine, to enter politics, and to get as much education as they possibly could. So a couple of women that we definitely need to remember when we're looking at the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment has really three legacies that we need to look at. The biggest one, I guess I left out of the notes because it's not in the book, but our biggest one is the influence that it had on the United States. The United States was really the first to put these thoughts into practice and see that some of these thoughts really do work in the real world. So that's kind of probably the biggest legacy of the Enlightenment. But the things we're going to look at here is first the belief in progress. They urged the end of slavery. They encouraged more democratic governments, things like that. And so they kind of took us out of the Dark Ages completely and into a completely new era of the world. They had a more secular look. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about the Renaissance, that the belief in the individual is just as important as the religious beliefs. And in the Enlightenment, we really start to see the people or the philosophers start to question religious beliefs and teachings altogether, which is a little bit further than we were talking about with the Renaissance, where they were thinking it was okay to think about the here and now. The Enlightenment's thinking about maybe the here and now is what we should be focused on, because we don't know about the next life, and so they're questioning the church. And the last thing is the importance of the individual, and human rights really take leaps and bounds here in the Enlightenment. And the biggest thing, I guess, about the importance of the individual is that the philosophers believed in the ability to reason was superior to anything else. That we could figure out the solution to any problem, to any question that we have, if we just use reason. That's really it for tonight, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we look forward to seeing you in class tomorrow. See you then. Bye.